They say paper cuts are small, but I learned a sheet of paper can cut a life in half. My own aunt used a power of attorney to drain my father's accounts while he was still alive and then tried to slide our family home out from under me. If you think I'm exaggerating, I wish I were. The first slice was small. The last one was the deed. My father taught me simple rules. Lock your tools, pay your bills, don't sign what you don't understand. He's a stubborn, decent man who spent 40 years on ladders keeping other people's lights on. When he slipped on black ice last December and fractured his hip, I moved back into the spare room to help him through rehab. My Aunt Dad's younger sister, the one who remembers birthdays and corrects everyone's grammar, showed up the same afternoon with a casserole and a stack of forms. Just in case, she said. It'll make paying his bills easier. The top page said, Power of Attorney. A power of attorney is a permission slip that lets someone act for you, pay bills, sign checks, make decisions. In the right hands, it's a lifeline. In the wrong hands, it's a crowbar. Dad, groggy from pain meds, signed. I didn't love it, but I also didn't fight it. I was the son with a beat-up pickup and a flexible job. Aunt Denise wore suits and spoke to bankers like they were interns. Temporary, she said. Only while he's on that walker. She took the papers and left her casserole. That's the day the mail stopped arriving. The first red flag showed up at the pharmacy. I went to pick up Dad's prescriptions and his card declined. I figured it was a fraud alert. I used my own card and brought him home. When I tried to check his online banking, the password didn't work. I changed it, Aunt Denise texted. Too risky to leave it the way it was. The second red flag was the gas bill past due. Dad pays utilities like religion. I called customer service and found out the mailing address had been changed 2 weeks earlier to a P.O. box I didn't recognize. She'd already rerouted his mail. When I confronted her, she was offended at the idea I'd be offended. I'm protecting your father's privacy, she said. You know how scammers watch obituaries and hospital lists. I'm consolidating his accounts to prevent confusion. Also, his old bank is terrible. That's the thing about trust. It doesn't shatter. It sands down, little by little, until you notice the door doesn't quite close anymore. Denise started talking like a COO who'd inherited a messy division. She drew charts about Dad's liquidity and redundant subscriptions, then told me the house was asset-rich, cash-poor. When I pointed out there was nothing wrong with paying bills the same way we always had, she gave me a sad smile. You're too close to this emotionally, Nathan. Let me keep the books for a month. Then we'll review. They did X, so I did Y. She blocked my view of the accounts, so I started walking the paper trail the old way. I visited the bank in person. The teller's eyes flickered. Then she went to get a manager. The manager called me into a small office and repeated a phrase I'd hear a lot over the next month. We're limited in what we can share due to authorization. Translation: Aunt Denise had brought the power of attorney, and as far as the bank was concerned, she was the driver now. That weekend, Denise posted vacation photos, new sunglasses, a poolside drink, a caption, finally taking time for ME after a hard season. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. Caregiving is hard. Maybe she was decompressing, but the fourth red flag was a $600 late notice from Dad's supplemental insurance. The fifth red flag was the property tax office calling to ask if we'd switched to quarterly payments as requested. I hadn't requested anything. At home, Dad insisted he was fine and grumbled when I hovered while he used the walker. He trusted his sister. She's good with money, he said. Always has been. I asked when he'd last checked his account. He said he didn't need to. Denise had a system. He didn't like the idea of being managed, but he liked the idea of falling behind even less. He was a proud man who hated feeling slow. By week 3, the mailbox was an empty mouth. I set up alerts on what I could still access: utilities, insurance renewals, the county recorder's office. I didn't expect much. Alerts are like seatbelts, you don't think about them until the moment you're grateful. The alert that mattered arrived on a rainy Thursday at 2:17 p.m. Recording notice: real property document logged. The subject line chilled me: quitclaim. I drove to the county recorder's office before the notification even finished loading. A quitclaim deed can be legitimate. It's a simple way to transfer whatever interest someone has in a property. It can also be a thief's favorite instrument because it looks official even when it's not. I asked to see the document. The clerk fed the printout across the counter, and there it was. my father's name, our address, and a second name I didn't recognize as the grantee. The signature looked like my father's, except Dad doesn't loop his J like that. The notary stamp was from a county 2 hours away. The date was last week. I felt like the room tipped. This was recorded today? I asked. Received yesterday, recorded today, the clerk said. There's a note about a power of attorney presented. That's impossible, I said. My father didn't sign this. You can file an affidavit of forgery if you believe it's fraudulent, she said, matter of fact. There's a form. That word, forgery, sticks to your tongue. Forgery means someone faked a signature to make paper say something it doesn't. It's a crime, and when proven, it voids the paper. I walked out with two forms, the affidavit of forgery and a small, oddly soothing word, lease pendens. It means suit pending. In plain English, you file it to put the world on notice that the property is in dispute, so no one can pretend they didn't know. It doesn't solve your problem. It buys you time. I went home and put the papers on the kitchen table next to Dad's coffee cup. He tried to stand too fast when I told him what I'd found. I put my hand on his shoulder until he sat back down. Then I split the story into simple pieces, like he used to do with wiring diagrams when I was a kid. This is what a quitclaim is. This is what a notary stamp is supposed to mean. This is what grantee means. This is why looped J is a problem. Dad swallowed hard. I didn't sign anything about the house, he said. The only thing I signed was that power thing when my leg was screaming. When I confronted Denise, she didn't blink. He authorized me to manage his assets. The house is an asset. We needed to shield it from Medicaid planning. We're not applying for Medicaid, I said. And the grantee is not you. It's some guy named Stephen Kent. It's a trust arrangement, she said. Don't embarrass yourself with what you don't understand. Then show me the trust paperwork, I said. She sighed. Talk to your attorney. I didn't have an attorney. I had a sick father, a rubber bracelet from the hospital, and a folder that was getting heavier. They did X, so I did Y. She dismissed me, so I went to people who weren't allowed to dismiss me, Adult Protective Services and the bank's fraud department. APS listened. The woman on the phone asked careful questions, dates, amounts, changes in behavior. We'll open a case, she said, like she was setting a glass down on a shelf. Get copies of everything you have, and take your father to his doctor for a capacity evaluation. It helps to have that in writing. Capacity is a simple idea dressed in a dignified word. Did the person understand what they were signing when they signed it? The bank fraud investigator was less gentle. We see this, he said. Family member with POA goes shopping on Dad's account. We're not saying that's what's happening here. We're saying we see it. He couldn't tell me everything, but he told me enough to feel both vindicated and sick. Since the POA, Denise had moved money from Dad's checking into a different bank, her bank. If the POA allows it, she can consolidate accounts, he said. But there are limits. We'll need to see the POA. I had a copy, the one she'd waved like a boarding pass the day Dad signed. I read it line by line. It was broad but not blank. It did not say she could gift herself money. It did not say she could transfer the house to a stranger. Buried near the end, though, was a clause allowing property management and conveyance for the benefit of the principal. Words that sound like a lockpick if you hold them just right. Where we are now. Dad's sister has control of his money. Bills aren't being paid. The county recorded a deed moving our house to a stranger. The notary stamp looks wrong. I filed an affidavit of forgery and a lease pendens to warn the world the house is in dispute. What's at stake is everything my father built on 2 knees and 1 stubborn back. The next 2 weeks were an education I didn't ask for. I learned the county recorder will accept almost anything that looks complete. They are librarians, not detectives. I learned some notaries keep sloppy logs, and some notaries don't exist at all. I learned move fast and close your eyes is a strategy in families as much as in business. I also learned how to be patient when patience feels like cowardice. APS scheduled a home visit. The bank scheduled a review. Dad's doctor squeezed us in and wrote a sentence that saved us months of fighting. On the date of the POA execution, Mr. J was under the influence of opioid analgesics post-surgery, with potential impact on decision-making capacity. He circled potential. He is careful. Careful counts in rooms with wood paneling and flags. Denise's entitlement grew like ivy. She started telling cousins I was unstable, that I was obsessed with paperwork. She told Dad's church friends that I was interfering with his care. Then she posted a photo of herself next to a new SUV with a caption, "New chapter, who dis? It is petty to connect a car to a bank transfer. It is not petty to count." I needed an attorney's letterhead. The first lawyer I spoke to was polite and non-committal. "These cases are difficult," he said. "POAs give broad authority. Intent is hard to prove." The second lawyer asked if Dad had other children who might contest me. The third lawyer said, "I don't take on family POA cases. They're messier than they look. They did X, so I did Y." Lawyers hesitated, so I did the things a good lawyer would tell me to do anyway. I gathered bank statements and made a timeline. I got copies of the notary's commission and journal. There was no entry for my father on the date the deed said he signed. I called the name on the grantee line Stephen Kent and got a voicemail that didn't identify him. I sent a certified letter. It came back moved, no forwarding. I requested call logs from Dad's phone carrier and found 3 long calls to a number that matched Denise's office line after hours. I also interviewed the person at the physical therapy clinic who'd seen Dad the day after the supposed notarization. "He could barely get into a car," she said. "We used a slide board. A slide board is a simple plank you use when legs don't cooperate. It's hard to imagine someone going on a 2-hour drive to a different county to see a notary the day after you need a plank to get into your car." At the 30-day mark, the pressure changed shape. A moving truck idled in our driveway at 8:05 a.m. 2 men in matching t-shirts stepped out. One went to the back of the truck. The other knocked on the door and asked for me by name. "We're here for the transfer," he said. "Transfer of what?" I asked, like an idiot. "Property," he said, reading from his clipboard. "Handover today." "Handover to who?" "Authorized party," he said, pointing his thumb over his shoulder. Denise came around the side of the house with a folder under her arm. She had a sweater draped over her shoulders like she was visiting a museum. "We're moving Dad's essentials to a safer location while we sort out the paperwork," she said. "Don't be dramatic." Dad was inside, trying to sit up in his recliner. "Tell me what's happening," he said, voice thin. "You're not moving anything," I told her. "You'll wait here. I'm calling the police." "They'll tell you it's a civil matter," she said, almost gleeful, "and they'll be right. Some things are civil until you hold them up to the light." I dialed anyway and told dispatch there was an attempted transfer of property based on a disputed deed and a vulnerable adult present, and that I had filed a lease pendants. I said elder abuse and tried not to cry. The officers arrived fast. Maybe it was a slow morning. Maybe the word elder is a siren. They listened to both of us outside while the moving guys pretended to adjust straps. Denise produced her folder. She had a photocopy of an agreement with my father's shaky signature on a page authorizing her to secure property for his benefit. She had the POA. She had the recorded quitclaim deed. I had something better. The affidavit of forgery stamped by the county, the doctor's capacity note, the notary journal with a blank line where my father's name should have been, and the lease pendants confirmation. I also had my phone open to a text she'd sent a cousin. "Once the house is out of his name, he can qualify. Then we can sell clean." She'd followed it with a winking emoji. People confess to their phones more than to priests. One officer took her documents to the patrol car and called the county recorder. The other asked me to explain what a lease pendens was. I told him simply, "It's a public flag that says this property is tied up in a dispute. It warns buyers. It doesn't decide who wins." Then I said what mattered: he didn't sign that deed. And even if the POA allowed a transfer, the notary can't produce a record, and he couldn't have traveled that day. Look at the physical therapy note. He needed a slide board. Denise changed tactics. She lowered her voice and dabbed her eyes. "I'm trying to protect my brother," she said. "His son is not stable. He's been controlling, and he refuses to follow a care plan. He's in denial about what his father needs." The officer looked at Dad. "Sir, do you want to move your belongings today?" Dad's hand trembled on the armrest. "No," he said. "I want to drink my coffee in my own house." The officer nodded. "Ma'am, given the dispute and the lease pendants, no property is moving today. This is a civil matter. You can take it up with the court." Denise glared at me like I'd stolen something from her. She told the movers to go. She told me I would regret escalating. Then she said the quiet part out loud. You have no idea how much I've already moved. Where we are now." The moving truck left. The police said no to the handover. My father said he wanted to stay in his house. We have a filed affidavit of forgery, a lease pendens, and a doctor's note. We also have a sister who thinks paper is a weapon and that we won't learn how to use our own. What followed was not triumph, it was admin. I filed a petition in court to suspend the POA alleging abuse. I asked for a temporary injunction to prevent any further transfers. I subpoenaed bank statements I wasn't allowed to see and asked the court to order the notary to produce their complete journal. Denise hired an attorney who styled himself as the kind of man who says, candidly, a lot. He filed a response calling me a disgruntled caregiver and calling the deed an asset protection measure. He also attached a letter from a financial planner who used phrases like spend down strategy and life estate. When my lawyer, I finally had one, a friend of a friend, took the case at a sane rate, saw the letter, he said, "They're pretending this is estate planning, not theft. Don't worry. A plan can be legitimate and still be abused. Probate is the court process that happens after someone dies to settle their affairs. We were not in probate. We were in something messier, fighting over the steering wheel while the driver was still alive." As the hearing date approached, Denise tried to rally the family. She called my cousins to tell them I was trying to cut her out after everything she'd done. She sent a mass email with the subject line, "Nathan's Misunderstandings," and included a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet included reimbursements to herself labeled caregiving stipend, paid from Dad's account to her personal checking. She said it was fair. Stipends can be fair, but they're not supposed to look like shopping sprees. Meanwhile, the bank fraud investigator called with a tone he hadn't used before. "We flagged a series of cash withdrawals that started the week of the POA," he said. "There's also a cashier's check tied to the deed transfer. We're freezing the account pending the court's decision." Denise's lawyer sent an angry letter about interference. The bank ignored it. The day before the hearing, I received a voicemail that sounded like it had been recorded by a conscience. "This is Samantha. I'm a notary. I got your subpoena. I don't know why my stamp is on a deed for a man I've never met. I never notarized anything for your father." I saved the message 3 times. Courtrooms smell like old air and polish. The judge wore her black robe like a shield and listened with professional patience. Denise's lawyer went first. He talked about compassionate siblings and preventative planning. He said the deed was part of a revocable trust arrangement designed to protect Dad's eligibility for care. He used words like fiduciary that make people nod even when the nodding is just a reflex. Then it was our turn. My lawyer is soft-spoken, which I think is why he's effective. He doesn't perform, he places. He placed the doctor's note. He placed the physical therapy log. He placed the bank timeline. Then he placed the notary's voicemail and pressed play. Samantha's steady voice filled the room. "I never notarized anything for your father." He placed photos of Dad's signature from before and after the fall. He placed the notary journal page with the blank line where my father's name should have been. Then he placed the text message Denise had sent about, "Once the house is out of his name." He let the silence sit like a stone. Denise took the stand. She looked small and furious, the way people do when the story they wrote in their head is not the one being read out loud. She said her stipend was modest. She said she had receipts. She said the SUV was a lease her company paid for. She said she'd changed the mailing address to avoid scams. She said the deed was recommended by a planner. She said Medicaid, like it was a magic word that could turn lead into permission. "Who is Stephen Kent?" my lawyer asked. "A trust intermediary," she said. "What trust?" he asked. "The trust we were setting up," she said. "What's its name?" he asked. She paused. "I'd have to check." The judge asked a few questions with the casual precision of someone who has seen this movie before. "Why transfer the house out of your brother's name to a person, not a trust?" she asked. "Why notarize it in a different county? Why is there no notary record?" Denise's lawyer jumped up to object and sat down again when the judge lifted a hand. My lawyer asked one more question that landed like a trap. "On the day of the notarization, how did your brother get to the notary's office 2 hours away?" She said, and then she found a lifeline. "We had a mobile notary come to the house. The notary whose stamp is on the deed says she never met him," my lawyer said. Silence. Again, you can learn a lot from silence. The judge suspended the POA on the spot, temporarily at first. pending a full review. She issued a preliminary injunction forbidding any further transfers and ordered the bank accounts frozen, with an exception for Dad's direct care. She appointed a neutral guardian ad litem to review Dad's best interest. Then she set a date for a full evidentiary hearing on the deed and the money. Where we are now, the POA is suspended. The house transfer is under a spotlight. The bank accounts are frozen except for Dad's care. A neutral third party is involved. It's not over, but it's not free fall anymore. Sometimes, justice is a bang. More often, it's a quiet series of clicks as the lock turns back to the right position. Over the next 6 weeks, the guardian ad litem interviewed everyone without taking sides. He visited the house, he spoke to Dad's doctor and the physical therapist. He pulled bank records with court authority. He asked Denise for her receipts. He asked the notary to appear with her journal. The notary appeared and admitted her stamp had been used on the deed without an entry in her log, something she blamed on a busy day and clerical error. The judge's eyebrows moved a millimeter, which is the judicial equivalent of a wince. The bank records told a story that would sound familiar to anyone who has worked in a trauma ward for finances. Small withdrawals that grew, reimbursements without documentation, a cashier's check for the filing fee of a deed, a transfer to a new savings account that listed Denise as POD, payable on death beneficiary. PODs are common, the bank investigator said on the stand. They're also sometimes abused. Our hearing felt like a rainstorm that builds and builds and then breaks all at once. The judge asked Denise why the caregiving stipend checks were in precise round numbers and why they were deposited on the same day her vacation photos were posted. Denise said timing was coincidental. The judge asked where Stephen Kent was. No one knew. The judge asked if the notary could explain the absence of a log entry. She could not. I testified too. I told the court about Dad's life in ordinary sentences. Yard work at sunrise, thermos coffee, coaching me through a home wiring project slowly when he could have done it fast. I told them about the day he signed the POA. I said I should have slowed it down, that I should have refused to let anyone put a pen in his hand while his eyes were fogged. It felt like confessing a sin and asking for a do-over I couldn't have. Denise's lawyer tried to make me look like a resentful son. He asked if I lived rent-free in the house. I said I pay the utilities and mow the lawn. He asked if I had ever had credit issues. I said yes, once, 10 years ago, and that it's not relevant to whether my father signed a deed he didn't sign. He asked if I had ever raised my voice to Denise. I said yes, when a moving truck showed up before breakfast. Then it was Denise's turn to answer real questions. Do you believe you had the authority under the POA to transfer the house? My lawyer asked. Yes, she said. Even if your brother didn't understand, he asked. He did understand, she said, too quickly. He wanted me to protect him. By transferring his house to a stranger, he asked. To an intermediary, she said weakly. The judge voided the deed. She ruled the notarization defective and the evidence of understanding insufficient. She ordered that any funds moved under the POA that could not be tied directly to Dad's care be returned within 30 days. She referred the notary to the Secretary of State for investigation. She kept the POA suspended and suggested my father consider revoking it permanently. Then, with a kind of formal kindness that made me want to hug her and also cry, she said, Mr. J, you are permitted to drink your coffee in your house without interruption. Denise looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. She didn't apologize. People rarely do in rooms where apologies are expensive. She left with her lawyer, and the sound of her heels on the hallway tile felt like a clock stopping. Where we are now, the house is legally back where it always was. The money has to be returned. The notary is under review. The POA remains suspended. The bank will rebuild the accounts with what it can claw back. Dad's rights are intact. The neutral guardian recommended a limited financial conservator to help with bills, someone who isn't a relative. Dad agreed. Pride isn't always saying no. Sometimes it's choosing a helper who won't ask for thanks. There's a private cost to public justice. The next Sunday at church, people whispered. Some whispered to me, some to Denise. A family friend hugged me and slipped me a recipe card like I was a widower. Another friend told me in a low voice that his brother did something similar to their mother, and would I share the name of my lawyer? I wrote it on the back of a bulletin. This is the part no one tells you. Once you say this happened to me, people come out of the woodwork to say me too. Denise sent one last email to the family, a kind of press release that tried to make the judge's order sound like a misunderstanding resolved. Hidden in the forwarding chain was a message she'd sent to a friend. If he hadn't snooped, no one would have noticed. I didn't reply. There's no clever way to answer someone who thinks the problem is being caught. Dad's health improved slowly. He graduated from the walker to a cane to the stubborn dignity of walking without either when I wasn't looking. He apologized to me for signing the POA without thinking. I told him he didn't need to apologize. He trusted his sister. Trust is a skill and a risk. If you never trust, you shrink. If you trust the wrong person, you bleed. We kept the kitchen simple. Bills in a binder, a whiteboard with due dates, a small locked file box for documents. The new conservator, a calm woman named Margaret who wears reading glasses on a chain, sat with us for an hour each month and walked through the ledger like a teacher grading homework. She was worth every penny because she took away the temptation for anyone, including me, to get creative with Dad's money. Creativity belongs in birdhouses and Sunday crossword puzzles, not in the column where mortgage lives. One evening, I asked Dad if he wanted to revoke the POA entirely. He nodded. We went to a notary I chose in our county with 2 neighbors as witnesses. Dad signed the revocation with a hand that didn't loop the J. It was small, but it felt like a flag planted after a long march. People sometimes ask if I forgave Denise. What they mean is, did you get over it? I don't think forgiveness and forgetting are cousins. I think forgiveness is a fence. You build it to keep certain behaviors out without standing at the edge of your property line all day staring at the road. We don't speak now. She sent a Christmas card with a photo of a beach. I put it in a drawer I use for rubber bands. If you're listening to this and your stomach is tight because something like this is happening in your family, here's where I am, what I learned, and what I would tell a friend. Paper is a tool. Learn which paper holds a door open and which paper looks like a door but is really a hole. A POA can be a lifeline. It can also be a leash. Never let anyone wave paper at you like it's magic. Ask to read it. Ask to slow it down. If they act like questions are insults, that's your first answer. Quick recap. My aunt used a POA to take control of my father's finances. Bills went unpaid while money moved. A quitclaim deed appeared transferring our house to a stranger. I filed an affidavit of forgery and a lease pendens, involved APS and the bank, and gathered evidence. A capacity note, a notary journal without an entry, bank timelines, and her own texts. When she tried a handover with a moving truck, the police stopped it because the property was under dispute. In court, the judge suspended the POA, voided the deed, ordered money returned, and brought in a neutral conservator. We revoked the POA and rebuilt the guardrails around Dad's life. Here are the precise points that cracked her story open. 1. The notary's journal had no entry for Dad on the deed date. 2. Dad's doctor documented reduced capacity at the time of the POA. 3. The physical therapy log made a 2-hour notarization trip impossible. 4. The bank timeline showed cash withdrawals and stipends with no receipts. 5. The Lee Pendens warned everyone the house was in dispute. 6. Her own texts revealed intent to remove the house out of his name. 7. The grantee, Stephen Kent, vanished a trust with no trust. 8. The notary admitted her stamp had been used without a matching log entry. 9. The judge suspended the POA immediately and then voided the deed. 10. Funds not tied to care were ordered back within 30 days. 11. A neutral conservator replaced family control. 12. Dad's POA was formally revoked, and his signature no-looped J said the last word. There's a temptation to end a story like this with swelling music and a speech about justice. Real life is quieter. The day after the ruling, I fixed a leaky faucet and Dad made a sandwich. The sun made a warm square on the kitchen floor where Mom's plant used to sit, and for the first time in a long while, I noticed the light instead of the shadow. Small things still sting. The first time the bank reissued Dad's statements to our mailbox, the pile looked like a threat. I sorted them with a knot in my throat. Margaret, the conservator, showed me which ones to keep and which to shred. We made a binder that would make a librarian proud. We set up text alerts on every account so no $1 leaves without a ping. We visited the county recorder to ensure no one could sneak a paper through the back door. The clerk showed me how to subscribe to recording notices. The world hasn't gotten safer. We got louder alarms. I still see Denise some Sundays in the grocery store. She looks through me like she's late for something. I don't chase her. If she ever stops to talk, I'll say what I've practiced in my head to keep from being clever and cruel. You could have asked for help. Instead, you ask paper to lie. There's no satisfaction in that. There's only the relief of no longer pretending we share a map. In the month since, people have called me to ask how to stop something like this before it starts. I tell them what we did, and I tell them what we should have done earlier. Protect yourself, in plain English. Don't hand out a broad POA like it's a spare key. If you must, make it limited, define exactly what it covers and when it ends. Put it in writing that the agent can't gift themselves money or move real estate without a court say-so. Set alerts on your account so the phone in your pocket becomes an early warning system. Keep originals in a fireproof box, not a kitchen drawer. And if a deed shows up with a signature that doesn't look like the person you love, file the paper that says, in effect, stop the line. An affidavit of forgery and a lease pendant so nobody can pretend they didn't know. We're okay now. Dad's gait is slow but steady. The house creaks at night the way it always has. Bills go out on the first of the month. The coffee is strong. The mailbox is fat again, full of boring things and a few kind ones. Every so often, I run my finger over the edge of the revocation of POA, the way you test a blade to be sure it's dull. Then I put it back in the box and lock it. Some families protect you, some test you. Mine did both. I wish I could say I didn't see it coming. The truth is simpler and harder. I saw enough and looked away because the person with the casserole was also the person with the forms. If this is you, don't look away. Ask for the papers. Ask for the passwords. Ask for the plan. The people who care will slow down with you. The ones who don't will speed up. Speed is a tell. As for me, I live in the same house with the same address that briefly disappeared into a stranger's file. When spring finally showed up, I planted tomatoes in the same patch Dad used to scold me for crowding. He watched from a folding chair, a blanket over his knees. Too close together, he said, smiling. I know, I said, and left them as they were. The plants did fine. Some things are stronger than we give them credit for. Some roots don't care how many times you shake the trunk. When I water in the evening, the light hits the kitchen window just right and throws a square onto the floor. I try not to make meaning out of it, but sometimes I stand in that warm square and think about paper thin and dangerous, fluttering and heavy, and I imagine every sheet we filed, every document that told the truth loud enough to drown out the lie. In the end, that's all we did. We made paper talk back, and the house listened. Protect yourself. Don't grant unlimited power of attorney without clear limits and oversight. Set up account alerts and recordation notices so you see trouble the day it starts, not the day it finishes. Stay safe.